food is on the way, so maybe we'll start, and then we're a small group, and maybe informally we'll just eat and discuss sometime. Okay. So today, it's really, I'm honored that we have three distinguished guests who are with us: Anetta Kahane, Heike Radvan, and Andreas Nader. I hope I didn't massacre the pronunciation of your name. If I did, I'm sorry. So Anetta is the chairperson of the Amadeu Foundation in Berlin. She directed the Regional Center for Education, Integration, and Democracy in Berlin, and was the commissioner for immigrants for the city of East Berlin in 1990. She was the Moses Mendelssohn. She won the Moses Mendelssohn Prize for the promotion of tolerance from the state of Berlin, and the Theodore Heuss Foundation Foundation Prize for Initiatives in Civil Society. And she's the author of numerous articles and books, including I See Something That You Don't See, My German Stories, which is an autobiographical publication. And she's written widely in the Jerusalem Post, the Frankfurt Jewish News, and the Berlin Okay. And I've met Anetta in YIISA's work in Berlin and Germany, and I'm happy that you're finally here. And you'll hear that she and her colleagues are doing very important work and research. Heike Radvan is the Director of Programs, Strategies Against Anti-Semitism, and Gender in the Prevention of Neo-Nazism for the Amadeu Foundation of Berlin. She coordinated the exhibit on anti-Semitism in East Germany, and still coordinates this traveling exhibit, which made, I know, a big impact in Germany and beyond. I read about it in various places. And she also taught at the Free University of Berlin and the Alice Solomon University of Applied Sciences. And she has a PhD from the Free University of Berlin in Education and Psychology. Andreas Nader is the director of the program on Cultures of the Holocaust, Remembrance, for the Amadeu Foundation in Berlin. He's taught at Humboldt University and the University of Rochester in Binghamton in the United States. And I know he worked with the Fortunoff Video Archive here at Yale University through the Moses Mendelssohn Center in Potsdam. So it's really an honor that you're here, and it's an honor that you're here perhaps on an auspicious day. In Germany and other parts of the world, we're commemorating the Shoah, so it's fitting that we're discussing issues that are connected to this today. The title of the discussion will be Neo-Nazis and Anti-Semitism in East and West Germany, 20 years after Reunification. So welcome, and thank you for being here.
Well, wait. So thank you very much for the invitation. It's a big honor for us to be here, especially on this day. You already mentioned that. And we will not talk about anti-Semitism alone, but about the development of right-wing extremism we had in the past 20 years. And because I think it's important, this is an issue that... Yeah. So I will make a short introduction.
No, I'm going to, if you agree, maybe we take 5 minutes and we'll just get some food.
Okay.
And then less interruptions.
So I just wanted to be here. That's what I wanted to say. And I wanted to mention that Heike and me, we are from East Germany, because our issue today is neo-Nazis and anti-Semitism 20 years after the wall came down. And Heike and me, we're from East Germany. I tell you that because our English is a little bit... So that's the reason why. Andres, who's also a staff member, he's from Argentina, but his English is excellent because he worked in Rochester, and so he will help us out if there is any problem. So, and I will try to give you an introduction to our issues, and then we can start. We can ask anything you want. There's some people here I already know, like Ulrike. And so this is a very small family in Germany who is dealing with the problem of anti-Semitism. Okay, so the last days we tried to explain what we are doing in Germany with the neo-Nazis and anti-Semitism, and we also wanted to ask people if they have interest in showing our exhibition on anti-Semitism in the GDR in East Germany before the war came down. And this was well, people were not sure if they liked this or not here in the United States, because they said, well, the GDR this is far away in times and locations, so probably it's not that interesting. Or if you want to talk about neo-Nazis today, this damages our efforts to give a better picture from Germany today, because now, 20 years after Reunification, Germany is a democratic and well-settled state in the middle of Europe, in a good part of Israel. So we are doing everything to keep this image and not to say that all the Germans are still involved in Holocaust. And you know, we want to go away from this stereotype about the Germans. So if we are coming and telling them what our work is, sometimes it's a little bit difficult because they don't want to damage this image. The fact is that we have a big problem in East Germany and in West Germany too, with right-wing extremism, with neo-Nazis. In the last week we had, well, we're here already. We had some terrible things that happened in East Germany and in the West too. There was a Center for Democracy, a community center for democracy, very close to Berlin, that was burned, and we saw some pictures of neo-Nazis in front of the burning building to show that they were the one who burned it. In Zossen, actually, where we showed the exhibit, just across over the street, not in the same building. So, and then we had trials against neo-Nazis who were accused for murder because they nearly killed some young students in summer. And we had a family attacked in Saxony, close to Dresden. This was on Monday. This is a gypsy family who lived 6 years in this little town close to Dresden, and they were so often attacked that it was very, very difficult for them. But now they burned their house and all the caravans they had, and they were not at home, so they didn't actually heard it. But this is still a terrible thing, and this is our everyday work, what we are doing in the Amadeu Antonio Foundation, to see how we can stop this mainstreaming neo-Nazi movement that is very strong in East Germany, and how we can build up a partnership and initiatives in East Germany to bring another atmosphere to this little smaller villages and little towns. In the bigger towns it's better, and in the villages it's worse. But we have this very big problem with no-go areas for immigrants in East Germany. There's still less than 2% of the population in East Germany are with immigrant background, so it's nearly white. And if there are coming people from the west part with Turkish background or immigrant background, they have a hard time there. So we are trying to to do something about that, because we think that it's impossible that we have a part of Germany, which was the country of the Holocaust, where immigrants or people who could be identified as Jews cannot go without risking their lives or their health. And this is a big issue for us. This is a big scandal in our eyes. And that's why we are very much focused on the work in East Germany. But now we see that the right-wing extremist movement is also moving to the West after all this experience they had in the East. But to explain what the difference is between the right-wing extremist movement in East and West, and what the specialty of Germany is, I have to make a step to Europe, a little step to see what is happening in Europe. In Europe, we have mainly these Western European countries with a very old-fashioned right-wing extremist populist, anti-immigrant, and sometimes also anti-Semitic movements there and parties. They are very conservative. They want to conserve what they have, but they want to exclude some groups. They want to exclude immigrants and Jews, and so they are exclusive, but they are conservative. So this is the main character of all these movements, like Le Pen in France, and in the Netherlands, or in Denmark, or even in Spain, and now in Italy. We have all this. This is a very, very old-fashioned, sometimes racist, but always conservative, populist against the minarets in Switzerland and so. In Eastern Europe, the situation is completely different. In Eastern Europe, you have this movement of neo-Nazis or skinheads. Sometimes they are called skinheads. They are very violent. They are very radical, and they are not conservative. They are revolutionary. They are trying to change the society. They really want another society. What they want is National Socialism. They really mean it. So the impact is completely different, and it's very strong. That you can see it if you see where you have all these right-wing extremist groups in Russia, in Ukraine, in Czech Republic, in Slovakia. Hungary is a little bit different, because Hungary has partly another tradition. But you find this national revolutionary or this national Bolshevist, I call it so, national Bolshevist movement, you find it in nearly all the Eastern European countries. In Hungary you have this old tradition of the Ustasha fascists that are also very, who have been very conservative too. But the new right wing from Eastern Europe is not conservative, and it's not bourgeois. It is very proletarian, and it is very close to the ideology of socialism. In another way, but that's it. So I've been there in several countries, and I've seen it, and it's very, very similar to what is happening in East Germany, because the East German society is also a post-communist society, and people there, especially the young people, are not, for them, capitalism and democracy is something they don't want to conserve, because they've never had it. So now they're coming in a situation where they have to struggle for life and have to change their point of view. And they didn't like the socialism in this Bolshevik way we had it, but they like socialism as a, you know, as a form of society where everybody is equal, and where social problems now exist, and what is based very much on the national identity. The internationalist idea in the socialist countries was just a trick. In the real life, it was always very nationalistic. So this is coming in a very interesting way together now. So we have in East Germany this nationalist and revolutionary and neo-Nazi movement. And in Western Europe, you have this conservative, racist, populistic thing. And in Germany now, in West, you have this one tradition, in East, you have this other tradition. And now this is coming together. And they're trying really very hardly and with success to bring those two streams together. What is very difficult and causes a lot of conflicts in the middle of the right-wing extremist movement. So there are big fights and there are big struggles and so, but they are still together, and that they are still a common movement, and they are still have the power to come in some of the parliaments of the states of Germany. This is amazing. So I think that the right-wing extremist movement had much better results in the reunification than most of the parts of the society between East and West. So if you see some of the parties, of the political parties, they have so big problems to come together with the mentalities of East and West, but the neo-Nazis haven't. They got it. So they have this NPD, the National Democratic Party, which is the head of the movement on the party level. And then you have different cultural expressions of neo-Nazism in the youth culture, or in everyday life, or so they're coming into everything that is in the everyday life. Hopefully Heike will tell us a little bit more, if you are interested, about how it is feeling, because she's specialized in gender and neo-Nazis. What is very interesting, because in the everyday life, the women are taking a big place now, more and more, because they are really neo-Nazis, so you never forget that, and they are not conservative. But if they come into the, when they're becoming the school board, how do you say, the school speaker, or the parents, the representative of the parents, or they are elected in the local parliament, or they are elected, or they are building up some women's circles, or they are giving advice to unemployed people, and they give good advice, or they are doing some kindergartens stuff, or they are nurses. So this is becoming like very scary, because you don't feel it at the first moment, but they are coming very close to the family life. And most of the people in East Germany have certain difficulties with the democracy. So more than the half of the population is not don't think that democracy is a better form of governing. So they are very open to this kind of very popular things these people are telling and doing, and that's why this is so dangerous. The young people, they have some organizations called in German Kameradschaften. These are little groups. It's not gangs. It's not it's something else than gangs, because they're very, very well organized. They're very good. They have a very modern style of leadership. They don't have a, they have a collective leadership. They are not. They are hierarchical, but not that way everybody thinks. They are not really looking for a Führer. So they have a broad base of people who are able and willing to do things. And we have hundreds of Kameradschaften in Germany, East and West. this is an elite circle of neo-Nazis who are organizing and strategizing the work of the neo-Nazi groups in the region. So they're very located, and they know very well their neighborhoods and their cities and their villages. They are the sons and daughters of people who are living there, so it is becoming very hard for the authorities to do something about it, because they are the kids, you know, they are the family. And in some points, especially in East Germany, they are much closer to where the heart is beating than any immigrant that is killed. We had nearly 150 people killed by neo-Nazis since the war came down. And the first one was Amadeu, who is, you know, the one who we were named after. Amadeu was a worker. He was a worker in East Germany, and in November in 1990, he was attacked in a little town close to Berlin, and he was beaten up and died some weeks later. And he was the first one. And since then, we had a lot of cases like his. So in 2008, sorry, in 2008 there were 6 people killed in East Germany, and the media didn't really notice that because no one wants to talk about that anymore. You know, so they don't know what to say, how to comment. Yes, it's a problem. We have this neo-Nazi stuff, but yeah, but what can we do? It's very hard to come to in the media with this issue. So what I wanted to say is that the very close connection to the community life, to the local everyday life, and very close attitude to everything what is an issue today. It's globalization, it's social security, it's unemployment, it's health, it's immigrants, but not that, you know, immigrant issue and Jewish issue is not the first thing they are putting in front of these neo-Nazis, but they're dealing with all the other questions. Environment, very important. And so they are very much, very on the level of the everyday discussion, and they are trying to influence that in their own way, and that's why we are so, we have to deal with these issues and to make clear that there is nothing good in any issue if you don't consider that there should be an equal right for everybody, independent from his skin color and religion, etc. This is not very normal in Germany. You know? This is not. This is something we have to fight every day for. This is everything else than selbstverständlich. What do you say?
Anything but
anything.
Selbstverständlich.
Understood.
What?
Understood.
Right. Taken for granted. It's not taken for granted.
No, not at all. So not at all. And yes, and that's what we are trying to do with our work. So the Amadeu Foundation, I will now tell you a little bit about what we are doing on that. Is a small foundation. We don't have money, but we are very, very important. No, sometimes you have to whack the dog, you know. No, people are listening to what we are telling them. We have different websites, and we are giving all those news that don't come into the media in our website. So this is very important for all people who are working in this field in anti-Semitism and neo-Nazis to be informed, also when the media is not talking about it. And we are trying to to collect money, to give grants to small initiatives in these communities that are in danger to be brown cities, and to empower them and to give them advice and help and to send famous people there and to bring them up, to empower them, but to give them money too, because we cannot do everything without money. And on the other hand, we are an operative foundation, so we have our own projects. We are running our own projects, like gender and neo-Nazis, or what Andres is doing, remembrance culture in East and West, because the culture of remembering the Holocaust in East and West is very different. We had in East Germany, we had this decision in 1945 that everybody in East Germany is communist and it's not guilty or nothing. So everybody was, the problem was resolved. The workers were the victims and not the perpetrators, so things were fine. And so they never deal really with the past. And people in East Germany are not used to do research on their own towns or in their neighborhoods, or to think about the Chinas they have in there. The people have a lot of things from Jews and they don't know. And this was never ever talked about that in East Germany. And that's a big field, the remembrance policy and remembrance culture. Because we think that if you don't deal with the past, you cannot deal with neo-Nazis today, because they are all coming from these families. They are the grandchildren from these guys, and so the political parties always want us to explain that neo-Nazis are coming from project buildings, because this is this kind of buildings is something that produces, I don't know what. And on the other hand, it's unemployment. And it's unemployment in project buildings, and then this combination makes neo-Nazis. And we say, well, this is not the point. We have enough research done on that, and we have to build up a democratic culture in everyday life, and that's what we are doing. And so we are trying to build up, for instance, a community foundation, what is a very normal thing in the United States. In Germany, it is also a normal thing now, by the way, but it's not normal that they are focused on democracy. So it can be completely possible to build up a community foundation in Saxony. It didn't happen yet, but in Saxony, where there are a big, there are people with a lot of money who are members of the NPD. So because they don't have any criteria of democratic issues in their community foundation. So this can be a brown community foundation. And so we are trying to work with all the community foundations that are existing in East Germany, and also in some of the west part, to make sure that minorities are respected and that it's integrative and not exclusive, and so and all this very so-called normal things, but is not normal. And then we are also running projects like Exit. This is a project that gives neo-Nazis who want to drop out the possibility to do so. So they are working with neo-Nazis who have their doubts now, and then they're starting a process so they can drop out for a longer time. And this is a very important project for us. And we are also trying now to build up something similar for people from political Islam. But it's not that easy. We have a very interesting, very, very smart person, Claudia Danschke, who is working with us in this project, and we did a brochure about the discussion, the level of discussion and practice we have now with the problem of Islam and anti-Semitism. And so we are somehow well prepared to this. Another point, and then I come to the end, is the question of anti-Semitism. I think we are the only foundation or bigger organization who is dealing with both anti-Semitism and racism. You cannot deal one thing without the other, and it's not the same. So you have to make clear that people who are fighting for equal rights for everybody are also they also mean Jews. You know, if you have this anti-racist scene, you have a lot of Israel haters and anti-Semites, and this is very difficult. So we are trying to make sure that we are, of course, we are against racism, of course, yes, but we don't want to say when we are working against racism, we cannot deal with anti-Semitism because this is too complicated with this Palestinian problem and everything. And so that's why we are trying to do both. We are dealing with anti-Semitism and we are dealing with racism. And who wants to cooperate with us has to accept that. And everybody who wants to work with us has to accept that and has to amplify this attitude. Say, no, that's not only about Israel and Jews, and it's not only about all the poor immigrants. This is somehow complicated and complex, but that's what we are doing. So that's my introduction.
Thank you.
And now, would you like to introduce us to your project? Just a short, you know?
I was trying to think of doing, I just wanted to add a couple of
Yeah.
things to what you said. Just, I mean, some of this might be known, some of this might not be. But one thing that, in terms of when she's talking about the cultures of remembrance, I just wanted, might be obvious to some of you, but still, you know, for example, something that the neo-Nazi scene has been using a lot is, you know, I mean, not only in Dresden, in a number of German towns that were bombed, they commemorate the bombings, but they do in such a way, you know, we have, I think we have a picture here as well, you know, that will carry signs talking about the bombing Holocaust, right? It's a Holocaust that happened to Dresden through the bombing. And this is picking up on a tradition that, not with that language, but that comes from the East German culture of remembrance, of talking about the Anglo-Saxon imperialist bombing of our innocent, you know, gratuitous bombing. You know, it's always called gratuitous as if, yeah, as if.
And today, on 27th of January, we have some Mahnwachen, memorial services from the neo-Nazis for the bombing Holocaust.
So this is one way, in a way, I mean, this is part of what we're talking about when we're talking about the anti-Semitism in connection with neo-Nazis today, is this kind of twisting of history and the kind of using the language, you know, to talk about the Shoah, to talk about the so-called German victims of that in the Second World War. I wanted to mention that. The other thing I want to say, you talked about our websites. We also have keep a chronicle of anti-Semitic incidents, and you know what happens regularly is you have graffiti and you have damage to property, mostly Jewish cemeteries. Desecration of Jewish cemeteries. I think the statistic is you have one every week in Germany. Not that you have that many cemeteries there, but Jewish cemeteries. But there's one. This is not our statistic. This was a statistic from you know, the officials. No, this was from the Amt für Verfassungsschutz. From, you know, this is an official source statistic. You know, we sometimes hear of incidents through our network that are not reported, you know, or are not officially acknowledged by the police as being either neo-Nazi or anti-Semitic, but the cemetery, one cemetery a week is official statistics. Just wanted to mention that to give you a sense of some of the things we're looking at here. And you said the main project I'm working on for the foundation right now is what Anetta already mentioned, the cultures of remembrance in East and West Germany. It's focused in two different states, the state of Niedersachsen and Saxony-Anhalt. And so Niedersachsen is Lower Saxony, right?
Lower.
Yeah. So it's and it encourages people to learn about the local history of National Socialism and the Holocaust, but also focuses on the local history of remembrance, how the towns have or haven't commemorated, marked where there used to be a synagogue, or now you might be familiar with, well, some of you might, some of you might not be, with this whole project in Germany that's been on for about almost 10 years now. The Stolpersteine, which these are brass plaques that are installed on the sidewalk to mark where a person lived who was deported by the Nazis, and this this is a kind of a way of marking everyday space with the memory of that time. So it's been that kind of project we've been working on, and it's been to generalize, it's been clear that in terms of in the West we've been dealing much more with what we could call the history of remembrance, and in the East we've been doing much more primary research about what happened here then. Right, that's been quite clear in terms of the just the general logistics of the project. Right, I think I can talk later in the discussion.
Heike.
Maybe I have to apologize for my English because I probably have to ask a few words because it didn't work out. But I mean, the question is what mostly you are interested in, because I could talk some about this exhibition about anti-Semitism in GDR. We did open it 2.5 years ago in East Berlin, and there was quite a big media discussion about it, because there wasn't any discussion about that there was anti-Semitism in former GDR at the times. So we had quite a big discussion. People were discussing whether it's allowed to say there was anti-Semitism in GDR. And so that was quite a big discussion, and we are this exhibition goes to a different town every month, so we open it every month in Eastern or Western Germany, and there's still discussion going on when we go there and open it up. So I could tell you something about this, or tell you something about the topics within the exhibition, or the other. I mean, I could as well tell you something about this, what Anetta already mentioned. There are neo-Nazi families. Like in the beginning of the 1990s, we got, as well the expression of scientific was that neo-Nazis are a problem of young male. I mean, it wasn't at those days as well, but nowadays we got this problem that those people, those men, have married. We got different regions where we got many neo-Nazi families. So we got children who are going to the kindergarten, who go into primary school, and we got these categories. Educators who come to us and say, well, we got this family with these kids, and these kids are raised in a racist family, and we got those parents who voluntarily work at our kindergarten and come to the kindergarten and say, well, we are living in Germany here, we don't have to have those pictures with black kids on the wall, just take it off. And so that's where it starts, and we got women within the right-wing extremist party who go to parliament, local parliament, and people are not aware of their opinion, of their ideology. And so this is a problem. We try to train educators as well as members of democratic parties to deal with the problem. So yeah, this might be both. Because I could talk a bit about it. Maybe I should say what you are interested in.
So thanks. So so we can open up to questions. Okay, so Professor Randa said I have a couple of questions. No, go ahead. I defer to you.
I'd like to get a little more of a feeling of the relative size of these movements and the time element. I assume that one of the reasons that there's disappointment with democracy in the East in particular, with the high unemployment rate and so on, is part of the problem relative to Western, which is doing better, not well, but much better. And in fact, how many of these people work through the system supporting the left party, which is a successor to the Communist Party, and how many are going outside channels. The relative size of this, I'm sure there are incidents, and you can count them, but is this mounting? How big is it? What percentage of the population participating? How big are these Kameradschaften relative to the rest of the population?
I mean, in numbers.
Some idea. I mean, you can find, spots in every society like that.
Yeah.
Versus how big are these spots?
Well, we have this pre-18 elections called, when in the schools they are doing these elections for kids, for young people, students, the age of 15 till 18.
Opinion polls?
Yeah.
Right.
And there we have some regions where there are more than 50% voting for the NPD. So in other regions it's not that high. It depends a little bit on the influence and the culture, of this region. If they are very strong there and the Democrats are very weak, so there are more kids voting for the NPD and the other way around. So it's difficult to say to give you a number of people. But one thing is sure, you cannot say that every neo-Nazi is only voting for NPD. Because I know some of those regions very well, and I know people very well, and so I know that they are voting for the left party, or they're voting they are voting everything but not the Greens. And they're voting things, and then but they have their right wing opinion. They are very radical right wing. But this has not necessarily to do with their votings. In some regions they are voting for the NPD, like in Thüringen, Sachsen-Anhalt, Brandenburg, well, nearly everywhere. So they have there around 6 or 5 or 10%. We had a local election last year in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Was Eckermünde, wie viel waren das? 15 to 20% of the population of one region voted for the NPD. And so you can be sure that not only these people are right-wing, but also some of them who are voting for the left party. Your question, if the unemployment, of course every society that is economically weak is more sensitive to this kind of challenge. But as I and Heike, we grew up in the GDR, and the GDR was a deep racist country. So people now are more open to talk about that, what they are really feeling. This was very focused on nationalism and on socialism, and immigrants or foreigners, what they call them, were treated very, very bad. And there was a very deep racist feeling. And if you go to some of those cities outside Berlin, you still have this as a normal attitude. They are so normally they are racist from here, and this is completely normal. So they're talking about every black person like, I don't know, this is so, and I think it's a part of the heritage of this of this education of socialism, what is never open-minded, it's always narrow-minded. and it's also the weakness of the Democrats, because there are no Democrats in East Germany, or few, and it's the weakness of the economy.
Let me just ask a follow-up. The official agenda of the NPD does not include Nazism, neo-Nazism, right? So if you want to do your own thing, you have to do it outside the party.
They are very, very linked to all those neo-Nazi groups.
But the agenda, of the official agenda?
Yeah, the official agenda has to be, because it's this would be against the law. It has to be so. But all these really, they call themselves also Neo-Nationalsozialisten, and they are completely integrated in this network of the NPD. They have this, they have the party. They have the party, and without those Kameradschaften, the party never would be elected. Would never be so successful.
I just may add something to that. Well, some of the elites of the NPD are very good at it. Are at treading the line, not breaking the law, because if, being explicitly pro-Nazi would be breaking the law, but at sometimes using symbols that signal what they're thinking of, but not going over the line. I mean, sometimes they're also caught. I mean, it is a criminal offense. They're committing felonies occasionally with symbols of the Nazi party of the NSDAP, right, of the old Nazi party. Sometimes they're caught with that too. So they're always treading this line.
And there are a lot of candidates from the NPD that are recruited from these neo-national socialist movements. So now we have some of the elected people who had the criminal past. They were accused as neo-Nazis. And this is sometimes a problem for the party, because there is an initiative to forbid the NPD, and they don't want to risk that. They have to be careful with people who are very much involved in the new fascist groups, but they are so much linked, they cannot separate.
So I think to follow up on the question, I think like you, I'm skeptical of the term neo-Nazi. I'm skeptical, sort of post-1945, post coming down with the wall, that there's ideologies and beliefs that are really, I think, structured and embedded in the society. And having spent time there, I think regardless of the nationalist identity in Germany, actually it blows my mind how strong it is.
Yeah.
And even among anti-racists and people fighting anti-Semitism, the old sort of beliefs and the othering of minorities, of Jews and others, it's staggering.
Terrible.
Yeah. So if you could comment on the notion of neo-Nazis, and I was also curious how pervasive this is. And you were speaking about how neo-Nazi movement is commemorating different versions of the Holocaust and that sort of thing. But actually last week I read an op-ed piece by, I believe it was the head of the Protestant church, it was, I forget her name.
Kasman.
And she was saying that if the Americans would have engaged Hitler, that the war wouldn't have been necessary. Which is, this is a liberal view. So how pervasive is this ideology of anti-Semitism and hating the other? Number one, and then the second question is somewhat related. Are there alliances between neo-Nazis and radical Islamists within German society?
First question, the problem of othering in Germany is a very, very popular discipline in every group, you have this Friends of Israel who are hating the Muslims, what is sometimes irrational, and you have this anti-racists who are hating the Jews for the same irrational reason. This is the positive field, and then you have this. I was talking just about neo-Nazis. When I talk about neo-Nazi, I mean not this this normal nationalistic feeling, what is not neo-Nazi. I'm so happy that some of them are Democrats. Yeah, they're voting for Democratic parties and they mean it more or less, but they don't want to have the Führer back. And those guys from the Kameradschaften, they want another society. They really want it. This is a different movie. You know, this is really a scary. We're introducing everything from the Nazi culture in music, in lifestyle, in food, in everything. So they're making a whole own world of that. You know, this is, and in the countryside, in smaller cities, not in Berlin, not in the center of Berlin, you find it everywhere. And this is, I call them neo-Nazis because we call them Nazis, but somebody told me it's not good to call them Nazis because in the United States you call them neo-Nazis for not to confuse them.
Well, I was getting at the point, is there something new about these Nazis?
Yes.
There is.
Well, there is something new about these Nazis because they are cultural much more diverse. Their ideology of ethnic pluralism is completely different. So they have no problem to talk with their brothers and sisters of Korea and of Spain and of everywhere in the world as long as they are of the same ideology. They respect that there are different ethnic groups.
The Nazis did that.
Yes,
Wait.
They did it with Arabs, they did it with Muslims. They did it
Yeah.
with
Not with Poles and Russians.
No.
So they're happy to
Not
collaborate with Polish neo-Nazis as
Yeah.
long as they stay there.
Yeah.
You know, the
Yeah,
Portuguese
yeah,
just
yeah.
stay in Portugal.
Yeah,
And
that's
do,
it, that's
and
it.
you know,
That's
then
it.
you have an international alliance of neo-Nazis
Yeah.
instead of dominating Europe, which would be the old Nazi.
The other question of Ms. Kassmann from the Protestant church, this is well, we are all like, you know, this is something that is so incredibly relevating the. But this is the core of the idea of the peace movement in Germany. And she is a person who comes from this peace movement. She is now becoming a bishop, but she used to be somebody who was protesting against the war in Vietnam and the environmental problem there. And so she's a very typical product of this kind of movement. And now she is becoming the bishop and the head of the Protestant church, and now she's telling that war in Afghanistan is not good, and any war is bad, and even the war with the Nazis probably, you know what you said, that's the point. But you asked me something else. I was
The connection between
Islamists and neo-Nazis. Well, the problem is they try to do so. For the Nazis, for the neo-Nazis, this problem is bigger than for the Islamists. We have some actions where they are cooperating, like the Al-Quds Day, right? Remember? Where neo-Nazis and the Hezbollah are doing their march together. Well, there are very few people from the neo-Nazis seen in this Al-Quds Day demonstration. But they are existing. What is for me much more interesting is that there is much more sympathy between the left wing and the Hezbollah and the Hamas. So this is now the point. They are
Same here.
yeah, and they are
West Germany.
brutally. Yeah, it's in West. It's in East Germany. They're just against the Jews. But in West Germany, this is very clear, and this the left party, they have a group that is called Marx 21. Marx 21. Is for the and there are some radical left-wing people there, and they have declared their solidarity with Hamas and Hezbollah as revolutionary movements, and they say that the opposition in Iran is a reactionary movement, and all these stupid things. So this is
All society, it's not only a phenomenon.
Yeah.
So, question here, and then Ursula, and then you keep Professor Katz.
I would be interested in the work you're doing about the people who exit these organizations. If you have a sense, I mean, probably not exactly relative numbers, but absolute numbers of people who exit, and what is it that prompts them to exit? I mean, what actually works? Is it external reasons, or do they have difficulties within the movement?
Well, this is easier. Well, we have every year about 50 people who are dropping out, exit. Some years more, some years less, but this is the number. And the reason, they are mostly high-level Nazis. This is not just any Nazi from the street, you know, a gang Nazi. And they have reasons. There are conflicts with the comrades. There are conflicts with the girlfriends. Sometimes there are some incidents, like somebody is taking them in serious. Somebody is from the Holocaust victim, a survivor, for instance. And if there is somebody who hold on, you know, and not to say, you're a Nazi, this can happen. This could be a moment of starting to think. We are working with about 10 or 12 former neo-Nazis who are going to schools and who are telling their story, and they are describing exactly how it works. It's just, you know, they have a very fixed ideological picture of the world. And so if it doesn't fit anymore, in one thing, it doesn't fit in anything. So the whole frame is not working anymore. So sometimes it's just a little, and then they are falling out of the frame, you know. This is a period of a long-term work. So you have to work 1 or 2 years with those people till they are really through. So we had some 300.
I wanted to throw in some historical perspective. I was born in 1938 in Cologne, West Germany, and I have distinct memories of growing up in post-war Germany. Every single one of my teachers was a Nazi. 1/3 of Adenauer's cabinet were convicted Nazi criminals. The entire judicial system, education system, the Byzantine civil service was completely and totally Nazi. As a matter of fact, my father, who had never joined the party and was anti-Hitler, suffered more, actually, after 45. Because they were making, I mean, the people who got ahead and were promoted were still the Nazis, because they all supported each other. Kameradschaften were everywhere. And when I started to work in '58, it was for the first time that I met people who praised the benefits of the Nazi regime. And I was shocked. So I also want to remind on the demonstration in Duisburg, I think it was, last year, in favor of Hezbollah and Hamas, in which very many West Germans participated and had placards that said, "Kill the Jews," or "More crematoria," or stuff like this. And when the German police illegally, without a warrant, entered an apartment where 2 Israeli flags were displayed, they broke in and actually wanted to charge these 2 students with breaking the peace. And also, I don't know whether it was 10 or 15 years ago, that a Turkish family or a whole group of Turks were burned in their houses and several people were killed. That was in West Germany. The reason things didn't come to this real extreme point in East Germany, as you described now, which is truly shocking, is that West Germany after 45 felt very restricted because it was.
Please ask a question. You don't understand.
Oh, well, my question is, do we have to give it more time? Do we need more education? Who is telling the neo-Nazis that the Dresden victims, that during the bombing of Dresden, Germany was still bombing England?
Well, I think that West Germany this chapter is still running. You know, they are still involved with this Nazi past. What I wanted to say is that the coverage, say of the Kameradschaften in East Germany is complete. All this country, there's no part of this country, only in Berlin, in the middle of Berlin, there are no Kameradschaften. In West Germany, it's different. So this new movement of very, very militant and very aggressive and very willing to kill neo-Nazis is much stronger than this. But you have this, of course, you have this heritage and you have this history and you have all these terrible things. We just wanted to make sure that East Germany is not always the forgotten country, the forgotten part that is overseen, because you know a lot of things about West Germany, but what do you know about East Germany? And we had all these terrible problems and all these people who were first in the Nazi administration and then in the GDR administration, just the same, it was just the same, but nobody talked about that, you know? And well, that's what we wanted to explain a little bit what
So appreciate it.
So Edith and
So it sounds like you have an enormous applied experience working, and I'm interested in the psychological conceptualization out of your experience, because you made a distinction between racism and anti-Semitism, and you said people talk about it. So some people, for example, last week, Wiswik was here, and he said racism is like, or discrimination is something more rational, cold, and anti-Semitism is obsession. And before you said like some people hate Afro-America or hate like blacks from here, like it sounds like obsession. So it's like out of your work, what like distinction you see? I mean, is it like the same phenomena that you say it's like only extermicity, or is it two different types that we need to treat it differently?